Welcome to our first Algebra Bootcamp video. The topic is expressions and equations. This might seem very simple, and if it does, that's great. That means today's an easy day for you. We're going to start with expressions. So the difference between an expression and an equation is that an equation has an equal sign, whereas an expression doesn't. We can simplify expressions and we can solve equations. So to simplify, we can combine like terms and use the distributive property. I have two examples of each here. Combining like terms just means that we take the ones that have the exact same variable and we combine them. I use the word combine rather than add or subtract because it just depends on the sign. So we have a negative 2x squared and a negative 3x squared, and those are going to combine to a negative 5x squared. Next, we don't have any other real like terms. Right here, this is the only term with just an x in it, so we'll bring it down. And lastly, our constant term is the plus 1. So that is the fully simplified expression. In our next example, we see that we have a positive 1a here and another positive 1a here. When we combine those, we'll get 2a. Next, we see we have two constants, a negative 6 and a positive 7. When we combine those, we get a positive 1. All right, moving on to the distributive property. Distributive property occurs when we have parentheses with more than one term in it. So here what we're going to do is first distribute this negative 9 through both terms in the parentheses. Then we're going to distribute a positive 6 through. Then if we still need to clean up at the end, we will. So let's multiply our negative 9 through. When we do that, we'll get negative 54m. Negative 9 times negative 3 will give us a positive 27. Next, we'll distribute our 6 through. When we do that, we'll have 6 times 1, it's positive, and then a positive 24m. Okay, from here, we see that we definitely have some like terms, and so we can combine them. Negative 54 and positive 24 will combine to a negative 30m, whereas this positive 27 and this positive 6, when we add those together, we'll get a positive 33. Our next one, we're not distributing the 3, be careful. We're really distributing a negative sign, which is a negative 1, in front of this binomial in here, this polynomial with two terms. So we're distributing a negative 1 through. If you want to write that in, go ahead. When we do that, the 3 is going to just come down. Then we'll multiply the negative 1 by the 11. We'll multiply the negative 1 by the negative x and get a positive 1x. And then, of course, we'll just bring down that plus 5x. From here, we can combine some like terms. So we have a positive 1x and a positive 5x. We'll write that first. Then we have a positive 3 and a negative 11, which combine to a negative 8. And that's really the basics of simplifying expressions. Combining like terms and the distributive property are the main two tools that we use in order to get expressions in their most simplified form. Note again that we're simplifying an expression, right? It doesn't have an equal sign. We're not solving it. We can't. We have no way of solving this. There's no equal sign. So we just get it as simplified as we can, which means there's no like terms anymore. Every term is just kind of on its own. We can't combine anything anymore, and there's no more parentheses to use the distributive property on. Okay, next we're going to solve some equations. Okay, these are definitely, Algebra 1 equations. We're just starting simple. but they're going to use the skills that we just talked about previously. So this first equation here has the negative out in front, so we're going to use our distributive property. So we'll have a negative 7 plus a 4x equals a 9. Now the question is, can we combine any like terms? No. We can't, because there's no like terms on the left side of the equal sign. This constant is not like this 4x. And the right side of our equal sign only has one term, so we cannot combine it with anything else. You can't combine the negative 7 and the 9 to get a 2. They are not on the same side of the equal sign. So all we're going to do here now is just solve. So to solve, we want to make sure that we get all of our x's on one side and all of our non-x's on the other. The way we're going to do that is we're going to add 7 to both sides, because as you can see, all of our x's are on the left, so we'll get all of our non-x's over to the right. When we do that, that cancels out, and we're left with 4x equals 16. Then our final step, we need to divide both sides by 4, and that will give us x equals 4 as our solution. If you'd like, you can always plug it back into the original equation to check your answer. Okay, let's take a look at the next example. There is nothing that we can do to clean up on the left-hand side of the equal sign. There's not like terms. On the right side, we can distribute. So we'll distribute that negative 4 through and get negative 4 plus 24a. We can't do any more cleanup before we just start to solve. So what we want to do is get all of our a's on the left or the right, really. But as you can see here, we have the exact same term on both sides of the equal sign. When we clean up, like let's say we wanted to move all of our a's to the left, when we clean up, they end up canceling out, right? So if you do end up having the same thing on both sides, you could really just cross it off, because when you end up subtracting it on both sides, they end up going away anyway. So this cancels and so does that. So we're left with just a negative 22 equaling a negative 4. Now in math, when you're solving an equation and your variable goes away, you either are going to have infinitely many solutions or no solutions. And that just depends on, is what you're left with true or not? This is clearly not true. Negative 22 does not equal negative 4. That means that this equation had no solution from the get, and we can use that symbol there to symbolize no solutions. Okay, I have one last example for solving equations. I just picked one that was a little bit more substantial. And we're going to first distribute this negative 5 through. So when we do that, we'll be left with a negative 5 plus 25x. Then we're going to distribute this 5 through. So when we do that, we'll be left with a negative 40x minus 10. On the right-hand side, we can simplify this. Because they're on the same side, we can combine these like terms here to get the negative 12x. Okay, similarly on the left-hand side, we do have two like sets of like terms. We have the positive 25x and the negative 40x, and those are going to combine to give us a negative 15x. Then we have a negative 5 and a negative 10, and those are going to combine to give us a negative 15. All right, now from here we can just solve, and we want to get all of our x's on one side. However, if they're ever, like on this side we see we only have one term, and so if we tried to get rid of this negative 12x by adding 12x, you're going to end up with a 0 on one side, and I've seen that cause a lot of confusion with students. So what is probably your best bet in order to keep a term on either side of your equal sign always is to get rid of this over here, negative 15x, by adding it to the right-hand side. So we'll add it over here and add it over here, and that way we always still have something on either side of our equal sign. So we still have that negative 15, and then we have a positive 3x. Our last step is to divide, and we're left with x equals negative 5. All right, the last slide that I have is just a few homework problems for you to try. Okay, here is your first homework assignment. It's these 7 problems, so just write them on a separate sheet of paper, make sure your name's on it, make sure that you label it appropriately, you know, like 317 homework. If you'd like, you can definitely write down the problems on a sheet and then just solve, or you can just solve on your sheet and pause the screen. It's all good. But make sure that you do upload it to the Blackbaud Dropbox for the homework assignment for 317. Good luck, and you guys can find me on Zoom if you have any questions. This is what we'll be doing each day, is just like a quick mini lesson and then a homework all built into one video to keep it easy. Then you'll just upload your assignment every single day. Again, let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.